Welcome to the 5 o'clock show. It's time for Common Sense. Now, it's Katz and Cosby with John Katzimatidis and Rita Cosby, standing for truth, justice, and the American way, bringing common sense to the world. Now, here's John Katzimatidis and Rita Cosby.
I don't believe we're on the eve of destruction.
Well, that was 60 years ago, and I don't think anything has changed 60 years later.
Sadly, there's a lot very relevant when you hear those words. And by the way, John, today we also have a special guest in studio, too.
Well, we have George Venizelos, and you were with the FBI, how many, 26 years, 27 years?
24.
24 years.
Wow.
And you were in charge of New York, area... was it area director?
Yeah, the New York City office, which controlled, 8 counties around the state.
And you are here because you are mad as hell and you couldn't take it anymore. And you objected a way that our reporter from Washington, John Solomon, portrayed what happened with the FBI on
right. With the case on the
the case where they allowed the Pakistani through the border.
Well,
and Judge Weinberg is here to comment on that too.
And by the way, he also there was what John Solomon was saying also is that this is a guy who had threatened President Trump, threatened to kill President Trump. So it wasn't just anybody.
And it wasn't just President Trump. It was I think the whole crew of the Iranian people like.
Yeah, there were a number of other people's,
yeah.
right, as payback for Soleimani.
And the only problem I had, because again, what happened, it gets repeated this morning with a worse twist on it. Here the FBI did a really good job making a case against this guy. They inserted undercover agents, brought him back, arrested him, and got him indicted. And now the FBI is getting criticized for letting him in. How do you let this guy in? He's a terrorist and stuff like that. First of all, whoever gave that sensitive list with that information about that guy to this reporter should be arrested or fired.
Yeah, it should be secret. I hear you.
These watch lists are very sensitive. The FBI and the CIA are the one to put people on the watch list. So they do let people in from time to time for reasons.
And what could be the reason in this case?
They let him in to make the case. Probably.
Interesting.
Maybe that's just speculation. I don't know.
Hopefully they were following him, right, while he was there.
They have their ways of tracking him, but my problem is the FBI knows what they're doing. I know they're open season right now. I know that they got caught up in this political web. Now, I'm speaking as an American. I'm not a Republican or Democrat. As an American. The FBI is very important to this country.
Absolutely.
It's critical to this country. And there's a lot of people who want to marginalize the FBI, China, Iran, Russia. And there's a lot of information that's put out there. They're loving that the FBI is under attack.
In WABC, all we want at WABC is for the American people to get the truth. That's all we want.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
And by the way, and everybody knows this about all of us. I mean, me, John, the judge, and, and certainly you. We love our law enforcement.
But we also want equal justice for all. Absolutely. I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
One of the, what is it?
This is one of the January 6th protesters.
January 6th protesters, that hits somebody with a flagpole. A flagpole.
Yep.
Just got 20 years. Now, a few months ago, Chief, Monahan?
Yeah, a couple of years ago during the summer.
It was 2020.
It's
less than a year ago.
No. I'm talking about the one during the riots.
Underneath the Brooklyn Bridge,
where
Chief Monahan got hit with a pole by protesters.
Yep,
right?
Yep.
That protester got 20 minutes.
Yes. And John,
there's a big difference between 20 minutes and 20 years.
John, what about Columbia University? What about the people that had the custodians hold
the hostage?
Yeah, and so far they got their charges dropped.
They got nothing.
Give me a break.
Wait a second.
As Sergeant Schill say it, they got nothing.
No, it's ridiculous.
I want to know who got prosecuted and who got convicted for the riots in the summer of 2020, the Antifa people and the BLM. The BLM people made themselves rich. They shook down the country. They got paid off. Those people should go in jail. They burned down. Oh, by the way, the governor who's running for vice president of the United States on on the Democratic ticket.
Yeah,
he let
Waltz.
Minneapolis burn, and it was okay with him and his wife to watch it burn down. There was $500 million worth of damage, and a lot of people were injured.
Yeah, 3 people were killed, by the way, too.
That's
3
right.
people
So-
were killed.
So this is okay. Where's the prosecutions on that? Where was Wall standing up on that?
By the way, before we get going, also, Jamie Raskin, speaking of which, because John brought up January 6th, he was on the January 6th committee. He just made some crazy comment, Judge
yeah,
Weinberg. Democrat Jamie Raskin.
He says if Trump gets elected, he's going to move to have him disqualified so he never takes office. What's that for election denial?
Have they given any of these people mental tests?
They should, John. You're right.
I mean,
They should. It is incredible.
Rita, we have Congressman Mike
Rogers.
Rogers
Yes,
on.
absolutely.
Why don't you bring him in? You're more qualified.
Well, I don't know about that. There's some good qualified people in the studio, but I'll be honored to bring him in. Congressman Mike Rogers joins us now, running also for Senate in Michigan, also former FBI guy for many years in the Chicago office. And first of all, Congressman, congrats on your big primary. You've got a big Senate race there, and you won handily just a few days ago.
Rita, thank you so much. Yeah, it's exciting, John and Judge. It was a big one. So we had a 4-way primary. We took 65% of the vote, and we won all 83 counties in Michigan. So it was quite a statement.
83 out of 83?
Yes, sir. That's a pretty good day in anybody's book, for sure.
Well, let me tell you something. You better win Michigan, because Michigan, they have some strange people over there running the Democratic Party.
Oh, my gosh. This is not your mother's Democrat Party. It's not your grandfather's Democrat Party. It is so far to the left. And they just keep marching down that road. And when they run, just like Kamala Harris did, I was just kidding. I'll be a more centrist. But when they get in office, I'll guarantee you all the things they tell you they're going to do on the campaign trail. I call them political cicadas. They only come out in election year. Other than that, they're living in the left and making our lives miserable here. I mean, the border is causing crime problems in Michigan. We can't afford groceries. Think of this. Talked to a woman just the other day who the caterer, after planning her wedding 14 months ago, came to her and said, "I'm so sorry. I cannot do the food for that price. I have to raise it." And it was enough to put her out of having a wedding this year. I mean, these things matter. It's not just about inflation numbers and charts and arrows going up. This is about real people who are suffering in the state of Michigan, and they're suffering for Democrat policies because they want to get all up in your business on every decision, from the car you drive, how you cook your food, how you heat your water, how much water is in your toilet bowl. I mean, come on, the federal government needs to back off and let America go.
George Venizelos, you were at the FBI at the same time Mike Rogers was.
Yes, I was. But Mike,
So I can't say I was the best FBI agent.
One of the best, right? One of the best.
Yeah, one of the best.
We need you in the Senate, that's for sure. Because one of the things I've been stressing is, and I think you can relate to this, the importance of an agency like the FBI, the importance of law and order. This party is destroying law and order around the country. They're killing our big cities, and we need an FBI to be strong and help the locals out. And we really need the public to start getting behind the FBI. We need to help the FBI and fix the FBI if needed.
I could not agree with you more. Remember, like I say around here, listen, the FBI has certainly gotten off foot from the agency that you and I served in, where the FBI were the good guys and the criminals were the bad guys, and we did not engage in politics one side or the other. They've changed all that. They've mucked it all up, and now people are starting to doubt it. And somebody the other day said, "Hey, why don't we just eliminate the FBI?" And I said, well, Detroit Police Department is not opening up any Chinese espionage cases that I'm aware of. And so you need a fully functioning FBI. Only the FBI has the resources that can apply to overtime to break up organized crime. And think of the organized crime cartels operating on our southern border that are now operating in America. You need an FBI that's fully functioning and focused on those kinds of crimes and not this political nonsense that they've been up to in the last few years.
100%.
And the agents that are doing the work are good people. They signed up for all the right reasons. You just got to get headquarters out of this notion that a little bit of politics is okay. Right. No politics is okay.
I can't agree with you more. And I think the Chinese are killing us. And I think there's a lot going on behind them. This vice president candidate has a lot of ties to Chinese. 30 trips to Chinese.
Yeah, 30 trips. And also he goes on his wedding anniversary to commemorate Tiananmen Square's anniversary.
He's been there 30 times commemorating Tiananmen Square.
The slaughter of 10,000 people.
They slaughtered 10,000 people.
It's unbelievable. How big of a concern is that, Congressman?
Well, listen, clearly when he comes out and says that China is not really an adversary, we all ought to be terrified. I mean, the Chinese Navy is now bigger than the U.S. Navy, and it's pretty modern, and it is not as good as our folks, but I tell you what, they're getting closer. They have the third largest modern nuclear arsenal in the world, and it's pointed at us. That espionage that's happening in this country is breathtakingly bad. The way they're trying to corner the economic market of the world on critical minerals and natural resources should be terrifying. So if he says that he does not believe that they're an adversary, we're toast. We cannot allow someone like that at
their space
any
program,
lever of power.
I think their space program is ahead of us.
It's pretty aggressive. They were, when I was chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, they launched their first missile. The Chinese launched their first anti-satellite missile, and they hit it. And that was a moment where we all kind of went, uh-oh. That changes the game. And they have been doubling down and investing in militarizing space in a way that should be very concerning. And for your listeners, imagine you get up and none of your electronic communications work, your GPS. I mean, think of that. You couldn't even find coffee in the morning without your GPS. I think that might be the most dangerous thing. 10 million Americans uncaffeinated by 10 a.m. could be really dangerous for America.
Yeah.
But that's the GPS system. They have a way to take that out. And think of all the things that are tied to the GPS system, all the finances we do using space. Almost every financial transaction bounces off of space at some point. They have the ability to shut a lot of that off. And again, him not understanding any of that, and certainly we know Kamala Harris doesn't understand any of that. I tell you, that's a sure way to make sure that we are viewed as extremely weak to our adversaries.
Yeah, absolutely. We're talking to Congressman Mike Rogers in
he's running for the U.S. Senate in Michigan.
83 out of 83.
And Michigan needs some common sense. So all of those that are listening from the state of Michigan, I go for Mike Rogers because common sense must prevail.
And your great background too, Congressman. Here's Judge Weinberg.
Mike, good to talk.
Judge.
Good to talk to you again. Let me tell you something. As I tell all my family and friends in Michigan, they have to vote for you because when a vote for you with your experience in the FBI and as chairman of the House Intelligence Committee is absolutely essential. This is a country that's under attack, and we need seasoned, smart people protecting America. We need you in the Senate because we need somebody with your experience, your background, and your judgment. We just don't need another politician in place. We need somebody who will protect America. And that's why I tell all my friends and family in Michigan, Mike Rogers is a person who should be the United States Senator.
I can't wait to have the judge come across Michigan. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, he was great.
Well, I need you everywhere. And by the way, we need you to vote for us in Michigan. But for those of you around the country saying, how do I make an impact on making America better, safer, make groceries affordable again, go on RogersForSenate.com. There's, you can give a little bit of money, goes a long way, and the Democrats are pouring money into the state of Michigan trying to beat us. So every little bit helps. Would love to have people get on there and check us out, and if they can, send a few dollars. That would be really helpful.
Well, absolutely. You are terrific. And thank you so much, Congressman. We are so excited to see what happens with you in November, and America and Michigan would be lucky to have you in that Senate seat. I'm telling you. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Have a wonderful weekend.
Hey, thanks, guys. And by the way, to my FBI friend there, I just want to check and see if you're wearing your wingtip shoes.
Are you wearing the wingtip shoes, George?
No, I've been out 9 years now, so.
Yeah, he gave them up about a week ago.
I don't wear a tie anymore.
Too many calluses.
Exactly. Well, don't forget to send them back your secret Dakota ring. Really.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Congressman. Thank you. And joining us now, you guys, we have Karl Rove, former senior advisor to President George W. Bush. Karl, we were just talking about all the threats to the homeland, just how serious things are right now with Congressman Mike Rogers. And yet we're just hearing more and more about Tim Walz, who is the new running mate for Kamala Harris. Your thoughts first on just how dangerous many of his positions are for America.
Yeah. Well, first, let me say something about Mike Rogers, whom I worked with when I was at the White House. He was the Intelligence Committee chief and chairman, and wonderful guy. He's not only smart and humble, but he's also very funny. And most important of all, he has achieved the thing that should commend him most to the people of Michigan in voting for him, and that is he married above himself. His wife is really terrific. And Mike is lucky to.
Yes.
Why she keeps him around? Why she keeps him around is beside the point.
We'll have to ask him. We'll have to find
she
out.
She wants to be married to a U.S. senator.
Ask her. I mean, ask her. There we go. No, look, Walz was a safe pick in the sense that he is basically nondescript. He's a Minnesota liberal, and he has comfortable positions. We've seen it expressed in the legislation that he has pushed through with the Democratic House and the Democratic Senate in his public statements. But he's a sort of left winger but pleasant and not particularly important one way or the other. This was her first presidential decision. Does anybody look at that guy and say, "Oh yeah, if something terrible happened to her, I'd have every confidence that the country would be in good hands"? No. He is a guy who didn't have the supposed downsides of Josh Shapiro. That is to say, the hatred of the far left of the Democratic Party. He hadn't expressed strong opinions in favor of Israel. He hadn't been a independent-minded individual who would break with Democratic orthodoxy in a couple of things like school choice, like Josh Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania. And he was an unusual governor in the sense that when he ran for re-election, he got a smaller percentage of the vote than he got the first time around. Most of the time, what happens is you do so well in your first term, you win by a bigger margin the second time. But in blue state Minnesota, the land of not only 10,000 lakes, but 20,000 lunatics, left-wing lunatics, this guy gets smaller percentage of the vote. And what does that say about him? It says that he is not a very particularly strong leader, and there's not much in his background that leads us to believe that if he were standing a heartbeat away from the presidency and something bad happened, that the country would be in good hands.
You know what I think of, Karl Rove? When I think of Tim Walz, all I think about, is during the riots, he let Minnesota burn. And the Democratic mayor there was begging for the National Guard. And he was saying, too bad. If he let Minneapolis burn, do I want that same guy to be running America at some point? Are you kidding me?
Yeah, look, for 3 days, the Twin Cities were in flames, and people were in desperate shape, and it was not a good look. And why he stood aside is beyond me. Of course, also it's beyond me why then President Trump didn't excoriate him for having sat on his hands for 3 days before he finally accepted the request of the Minneapolis mayor. Think about it. We're talking about the Minneapolis mayor. We're not talking about a center-right person. We're not talking about a conservative leader. We're talking about the mayor of one of the most liberal towns in America, and he was saying, "Governor, please help restore public order on the streets of our city and protect our citizens, deploy the guard." And Walz didn't do it. So, again, this is, we don't elect presidents based on vice presidents. I mean, look, remember Spiro T. Agnew, for God's sake? Mm-hmm. I mean, we elected Nixon, and Nixon carried, 49 of 50 states. But they do say something about the first presidential decision that a presidential candidate makes. And her decision was, I don't want to upset my party. It's left wing. I don't want to have somebody who's seen as strong and effective. I want to pick a guy who can be a Midwestern attack dog. And what does that have to do with being vice president of the United States? Maybe he'll do an exemplary job of taking internet rumors and attacking the Republican vice presidential nominee. But that doesn't say anything about his ability to do the job, and little in his record suggests that he is up to the top job.
Some of the first people who congratulated him were Jamal Bowman, the fire alarm puller, also Omar. Rashida Tlaib said he's the greatest thing in the world.
And who's the other one that lost?
Oh, yeah, Cory Bush.
Cory Bush.
That's right. In Missouri, just lost.
2 down. How many to go?
Look,
Yeah, a few.
I knew him. I saw him when he got elected to Congress in 2006. He sort of campaigned. The Republican incumbent had some problems. He ran as sort of a clean guy from the outside. I'm going to be sort of a moderate, independent-minded guy. And as long as he thought he needed to sort of throw an occasional bone to the right, he did. That's why here was a guy endorsed by the NRA in one election, because they were trying to find Democrats who claimed that they're in favor of the Second Amendment. But when he no longer needed that, he continued to move left. That's why he became a favorite of the squad. And then when he became governor, my God, the guy moved far to the left, and even further to the left when he got a Democrat state house and a Democrat state senate. The first time he ran for governor, he said, I'm going to work with the Republicans, and then stiff-armed them. And when he got a Democrat house and a Democrat senate, passed a whole slew of very left-wing legislation, including declaring the state to be a refugee state for trans kids. So if you want to go and make certain that you can have gender affirming,
make sure you have tampons in the men's bathroom.
Yeah,
that's right. They call him Tampon
Tim.
Tim.
Brilliant idea.
Tampon Tim is the new nickname.
We got to take a break. Thank you, Karl Rove, and have a great weekend and pray for America.
Thank you, sir.
We're going to take a break, and right after the break, the country's leading economist, Larry Kudlow, to find out how we're doing.
A common sense recap of the day's biggest stories. It's John Catsimatidis and Rita Cosby. Katz and Cosby on 77 WABC.
Well, Friday afternoon, TGIF. And I guess you got to be as old as me to remember what that means. Thank God it's Friday. With us today is our country's leading economist to find out what's going on in our country this week, financial-wise, and our number one show on Saturday mornings from 10 o'clock to 1 o'clock. Larry Kudlow, what's going on?
Well, it's difficult. I think the economy is really at a tipping point right now. And I think that's part of the volatility you're seeing in the stock market. Stocks, by the way, are down 3% from last Wednesday when we started the correction. They came back from the horrible Monday, which was probably Japanese-based. But we have problems at home. You've got a job slowdown. You got unemployment going up. Manufacturing is down. Housing is down. Paychecks are still shrinking. A lot of people think, middle-income people are already in a recession. I don't think we're in a recession. As I've said the last few weeks, I think we may be at the front end of a recession because of all these softness. But I really think you're at a tipping point. We'll get a lot of numbers next week. I think we'll get retail sales. We'll get consumer prices. We'll get manufacturing and production so we can take a look at it. But I think it's very tricky. I think there's a lot of uncertainty out there. I also want to say, it's like the whole world is over leveraged right now. That was part of this yen carry trade debacle that started in Japan Sunday night and then spread to us on Monday. But everybody's over leveraged. The federal government's over leveraged. Consumers are over leveraged. The Magnificent Seven tech companies are over leveraged. So there's a lot of issues. Very tricky. It's not a fabulous story.
You mean that Warren Buffett wasn't happy with Apple at 70 times sales?
Yeah, well, there you go. You're right. I mean, that's right. He's got his money in cash or cash equivalents, and he's a pretty savvy guy. I guess no one's always right or wrong, but I think Mr. Buffett's a very savvy guy. We're just going to have to work through this. There's a lot of talk about emergency Fed rate cuts. I don't expect that. I don't think that's even a good idea. I mean, to be honest with you, I'd rather we cut tax rates than the Fed start cutting interest rates. Let the market cut rates. I don't want the central bank to start with money.
Trump tax cut expires next year.
Yeah. And I think he did very well in his press conference yesterday talking about how he's the low tax guy and Kamala Harris is the high tax person. I don't know if anyone is old enough to remember Walter Mondale, who ran on tax hikes in 1984
He only lost 49 states.
I know. And the great thing is he was from Minnesota. So who else is from Minnesota? Well, Kamala Harris's running mate is from Minnesota, another progressive Democrat who's talking about raising taxes. You don't want to raise taxes now. You want to be cutting taxes. That would really help middle-income people. It would also help small businesses. So it's tricky. It's very, very tricky. We are at a tipping point of sorts.
I played the song before. We're on the eve of destruction. And Larry, that song is 60 years old.
Oh, my God.
That means nothing has changed in 60 years.
Yes. Well, I'm a child of the 50s myself, so there you have it.
I'm there next to you.
I know you are. I think some other panelists are, too, actually. They may not want to fess up.
I have nothing to say.
The youngest one here is Rita.
Thank you very much, guys. I'm very proud of that. Thank you.
Well, Larry, we'll be listening to you tomorrow between 10 and 1. And what are you going to be talking about?
Lots and lots on the economy. Lots and lots on the economy and the markets. We'll have some politics in between.
So all you listeners out there, and we go a long way, 173 countries and 50 states. If you want to decide over the weekend which way you're going to be investing your money, well, listen to Larry Kudlow. Larry, have a great weekend, and I'll be listening tomorrow.
Thanks, John. Thanks, everybody.
Now, we got, the hot news of the day, sponsored by Robert Unanue and Goya Foods.
It's the top news of the day, sponsored by Goya. Here's Rita Cosby.
Well, and we love the Goya beans, right, John?
I love those Goya beans.
Those are the best.
Those are really quality beans.
They are, and we love Bob, too. He is such a great American. Here are some of the big headlines, guys. Former senior advisor to President Biden, Anita Dunn, is attributing that the end of Biden's re-election campaign, she says, is due to horrible attacks by Democrats and the press. In an interview with Politico that just came out, Dunn said Biden's poor debate performance against Trump was not the reason for his campaign's demise. She revealed that instead, public comments from congressional Democrats, including former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, casting doubt on Biden's candidacy. That's refreshing to hear, all right? Also, President Biden will hit the campaign trail next week with Vice President Kamala Harris. The White House just announced a little bit ago the two will travel to Maryland on Thursday. And Governor Hochul of New York is declaring a state of emergency. A tornado watch is now in effect for parts of the tri-state area until 10 p.m. as Tropical Depression Debbie heads toward the region. We're going to be talking with Jimmy Patronis, the CFO of Florida, to see how Florida has fared through this terrible, terrible storm. And those are the headlines from Goya.
You're commuting home with Katz and Cosby. Now, here's John Katzimatidis and Rita Cosby on 77 WABC.
Well, the leader of the Italian community, and we have Vito Fossella, who is also the borough president of Staten Island. What's going on with the Columbus statues?
Well, don't let the name fool you. Vito, I'm half Italian, John. So good evening, everybody.
And the other half is
what's
Irish.
the other half? Is it
I'm
Irish?
proud to be a son of an Irish woman. My mother's family is a descendant of the Irish people, and very proud, half Italian, half Irish. So
I will never get you mad with both of those.
So what had happened was, and I've been listening to your show, great show as always, and Mike Rogers, I served with Mike. He was a great congressman, and he would make a great senator. But, like a lot of things during those riots in Minnesota a few years ago, when governor was governor of Minnesota, just allowed all these statues, the Columbus statues, to be knocked down, and as it occurred around here in other parts of the country.
And Vito, you're talking about Tim Walz, who is the governor now, who's now Kamala Harris's running mate.
That's right, and I heard Carl talk about the riots of the days, and among the things that happened when they knocked down the statue of Columbus, and it's important to the Italian American community. It symbolizes the contributions and sacrifices they have made to this country to make this country the greatest in the world, and it's symbolic. But the more important thing to me, frankly, of all these things, it goes to the root cause of who these people really are, and what they are, the far left these days, are anti-free enterprise, anti-progress, anti-Western values, anti-everything that's made this country
anti-God,
great.
anti-religion, what else?
Everything that makes this country what it is, they are against. And they take it out by knocking down statues. They take it out by plundering cities. They take it out by defunding police. They take it out by beating up police. And all these things, the policies of Harris and Walz should be played in the 7 swing states, in Macomb County, Michigan, and outside of some of the cities in Wisconsin, in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. And I just am shocked that somebody like this can support these things and at the same time say, by the way, all those positions I've had at the age of 58, 59, 60, guess what? I changed my mind on all of them. I'm no longer opposed to fracking. I'm no longer opposed to eliminating health care. I'm no longer the border czar that has disrupted, we know, not just the border, but places across New York City, and we fought them here on Staten Island. It's just shocking to me that they're getting away with all this nonsense because the statue, again, was knocked down, but behind it all are the people who believe that this country is horrible, and we need to send a signal that this country is great, and those people are the ones who are horrible. And between now and November, those messages need to get out, especially in the swing states.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, look, he let Minneapolis burn for a few days. And then when the National Guard was planning on coming in, Vito, he said, oh, you're not going to get well-trained troops. You're going to get 19-year-old cooks. I mean, you can't make it up.
Well, the other thing that we got in Staten Island, I understand from Vito, you have some nurses black nurses, are they? That developed a
big
cure,
breakthrough, right?
A cure for what? Tuberculosis?
Well, when tuberculosis was, killing too many people, there were a handful of women. They all happened to be black, and they were different parts of the country that came to Staten Island and, frankly, helped to cure. And currently there's been a book about it. The Staten Island Museum is actually having an exhibit to honor what they've done, and they recently their families were honored at a gala. So, yeah, there's a rich history here on Staten Island in so many different ways. We have the first free black settlement, longest sustaining black settlement here. It's called Sandy Ground on the South Shore of Staten Island. So we're proud of that history, proud of that the contributions that they've made. And these women, frankly, helped to cure and combat and destroy tuberculosis as it was known in the country almost.
And what's the dates on those?
What's the dates of the exhibit? The dates on the exhibit, I don't know, but it's a Staten Island museum currently, and it's on the grounds of Snug Harbor. You can take the Staten Island ferry over, and it's about a 5-minute ride.
Vito, we got to go to our next guest, but I look forward to going to Staten Island and being with you.
Always, John. Thanks to you and Margot and everybody in the studio. Have a great weekend. Appreciate it.
You too. Thank you.
Go to our next guest, Tony Schaefer.
Yep. We have Lieutenant Colonel Tony Schaefer. He is president of Project Sentinel, former Army intel officer. Tony, before we get started about Iran, Iraq, I have to bring this up. Judge Weinberg and George and John were all talking about this earlier. I don't know if you saw this. We're talking about Waltz. Tim Waltz, of course, who's on the ticket. Turns out he's got sort of a Reverend Wright in his background as we're talking about Iran and Israel. Judge, fill him in on this cleric who's tied to, who is praising October 7th.
Hey, Judge.
Well, hi, Tony. Welcome back. Yeah, there's a cleric who's very close to Governor Walz, and they actually go to a lot of events together. You support him. He said that when October 7th happened, it was a wonderful day. It was a wonderful event. He supported it. He hangs out with pro-Hitler groups and tapes. I mean, so I don't understand what kind of vetting was done by the Harris people and letting this guy be a candidate for the vice presidency of the United States. The last thing we need is a vice president of the United States who is a pro-Hamas sympathizer. What are your thoughts?
Judge, I think he was picked for that very issue. I mean, look, they could have gone with Josh Shapiro, but he's got two problems. He's moderate, and he's a Jew. I mean, this is Van Jones on CNN saying this. Van Jones said, anti-Semitism is now marbled into the Democrat Party. And I'm quoting him directly. So what you're seeing here is the natural expression of Kamala Harris and what she wants. And look, she also picked him, I think, because he's a quote unquote veteran. You all know, you all have known me as a group for a long time. My military service I'm proud of, and I refer back to. I don't use it as a tool to benefit me politically. That's what the left does with their veterans. They use them as almost an artifact that helps justify and give them some level of credibility. So I think they really thought, Judge, that bringing this guy in as a quote unquote veteran who had served 24 years in the Guard, who lied about his service, abandoned his men. He was the senior enlisted guy, abandons his men before they go to combat, and then tries to benefit from the title politically. So it's all about image. It's not about reality. And to your point, the idea that we would have two of the most radical individuals, and I'm nonpartisan. I love my liberal friends who cherish free speech, who cherish the idea of allowing people to be anything they want to be. This is not it. This guy has got also ties with China, which are very questionable. He's been going to China for the past 20 years.
He picked the anniversary, Tony Schaefer. Yeah. He picked the anniversary of his wedding to be in sync with Tiananmen Square, where 10,000 people were killed. I mean, that's bizarre.
Yeah. Well, it speaks to his character. And there's a number of other things which are inconvenient about his character, which I think are going to become more and more prominent. I don't think this guy is going to be able to shake off all the negative information that you brought up that we're talking about now. I think this is going to be something that actually drags down Kamala Harris's campaign.
Well, it is really. The more I hear about this guy, I'm shaking my head. Before we let you go, Tony, obviously right now is such a serious time. Look at what's happening with Israel bracing for what looks like an imminent attack from Iran. How concerning is this? And also, given what we're just talking about, can you imagine if it was Kamala Harris and Tim Walz in the White House?
Well, that's part of the problem. We don't know who's actually running the White House right now. We've talked about that before. And what's notable right now is the White House twice has went out and said publicly the attack is imminent. Well, it's not. And I said on the record last time we spoke, it's not going to happen. What's happening right now is they are being reinforced by the Russians. The Russians over the past week have delivered S-400 anti-aircraft missiles, the most modern in the world, which is defensive. But more importantly, they've given them the Kinzhal hypersonic missile, which is offensive. That thing is something that's been used against the Ukrainians. It's a very effective offensive weapon. Oh, by the way, it's nuclear capable. So I think the Iranians are really just kind of taking a step back and trying to assess how best to arm themselves with Russian weapons. The Russians are their ally, and go about doing an attack on a time of their choosing. And I think it's still coming. I think they're just hanging back a little bit to figure out how best to do it at a time when we're not prepared for it. Right now, we did send forward Aegis cruisers, a bunch of new Patriot batteries, the F-22. I think we're postured to do something. But right now, I think the Iranians want to be better prepared to defend against or actually conduct offensive operations when they're ready.
Wow. Scary stuff. Thank you, Tony.
Yep.
We really appreciate it. Lieutenant Colonel Tony Schaefer with Project Sentinel. Thank you, Tony.
Thank you, Tony.
Thank you.
Well, now let's go to Florida. And with us from Florida is the CFO of Florida, Jimmy Petronas. Jimmy, tell us, how did you guys fare in the hurricane?
We're still open for business. We still want you to come on down.
Come on down.
Look, the storm almost was the identical path of Hurricane Idalia last year, less than a year ago. I'd kind of give you a little snapshot. Idalia was a stronger storm, generated 25,000 claims with about $300 million in losses. So far, as of today, Debbie generated 12,000 claims and about $90 million in losses.
Wow.
Wow. And it's coming up here, by the way. They said that even through tonight now it's a tropical depression.
Yeah, and you know, you still gotta be careful because it wasn't that long ago the flooding that y'all experienced, and it was catastrophic from the storms that make it up your way. But there's still. I'll just tell your listeners that there's bad actors out there, and this is what we fight against. There's bad actors that try to get in between you and your insurance claim, and whether they get a copy, get a piece of your claim, and get 15-20% of it through various manipulations where they take over the claim. So please, if you're having storm issues, call your agent, call your carrier if you have any damage. Those should be your first phone calls.
And despite the hurricane, are New Yorkers still flooding down there? You still feeling the exodus?
Yeah, I'm still scratching my head. What's taking you so long to set up a little station down in St. Petersburg?
That's true. We need our Katz and Cosby and crew stationed down there. That would be a nice place to have it. We would love that.
I would love to issue the press release, welcoming the Katz and Cosby headquarters to Florida. Absolutely.
And Jimmy, it's Richard Weinberg. And can we have a party at your family restaurant to celebrate that if we do that?
Yeah, absolutely. Matter of fact, what you ought to think about this coming Friday the 16th. We're going to have a celebration live from Uncle Johnny. He was 96 years old. And
wow!
God rest his soul. God, he Mr. John, you ought to all love him. He loved a good party, especially when it was in his honor. So my Uncle Johnny, he was from the island. He was from Tallahassee. Both sides of my family from the island of Patmos, and he was really a Greek statesman. But yeah, we'll throw a party, multiple parties. We love to party down here.
Well, my turn to wave at you next week from the island of Patmos.
Good. Are you going to go?
I think so. We'll see.
Well, I tell you, it is such a magical place. I know we've talked about it in the past. I mean, it's a very spiritual place.
That's where St. John's Cave is.
Yeah.
And the last
Book of Revelations.
The last time we went into St. John's Cave, we couldn't sleep that night. And I think, Jimmy, you couldn't sleep either after that, right?
No. I tell you, Mr. John, so I went there. It was the year that my father passed away, and I'm walking away from the cave, and I was so I was trembling. I was so just overwhelmed with emotion. It's a very powerful place. It's definitely a holy site that if you have not had a chance to visit, it's well worth the trip.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you, Jimmy Patronis, and we're going to have to take a break, and God bless you, and enjoy the weekend.
All right, y'all. Have a great weekend.
Thank you so much.
Okay, we're going to take a break right now, and what happens afterwards?
Afterwards, we have a former UN weapons inspector, Scott Ritter, who suddenly had authorities show up at his door. He's going to explain. It's a blockbuster interview.
It's a common sense recap of the big stories. It's Katz and Cosby on 77 WABC.
And we are back here on Katz and Cosby. Well, John, our great host, Frank Morano, on the other side of midnight, had a blockbuster interview. It was really interesting with Scott Ritter. He is the former UN weapons inspector. He went over to Russia, and then he got a visit from the feds at his house. It was after he had also testified on behalf of RFK Jr. So lots of questions.
But the other mistake he made is he went to Moscow, and he made remarks that, Putin's not a bad guy, or something like that.
Yeah.
So I guess that made the FBI a little
nervous. A little nervous.
Let's listen to it and see what he says.
All right, Scott, the FBI raided your house on Wednesday afternoon. What happened? Why did the FBI raid your house?
Well, according to the FBI, and I'll say, first of all, it's a very unpleasant experience.
You're kidding. I'm shocked.
By the FBI, and they literally they overturned your entire house, and they arrived at my house and presented me with a search warrant. They said it was related to the Foreign Agent Registration Act, that they had concerns about my activities, and I said, well, let's talk about it. And they said, well, no, we're going to search your house. But then we also talked about it. So while my house is being searched professionally, by the way, I want to make this clear that they were very courteous, they were very professional, they were doing a very unpleasant task, at least from my perspective, but they did it professionally, and so I don't have any issues with that. I have issues with what they were doing, though, because as I talked to them, and I told them, there's no need for you to do this. Ask me a question, I will get you the answer. And they did ask me the questions, and I gave them all the answers they want. They are concerned that I am acting at the behest of the Russian government, that I am being compensated by the Russian government, that I am taking direction from the Russian government, that I am serving as an agent of the Russian government. And I let them know in no uncertain terms that that is the furthest thing from the truth, that I am an American citizen, an American patriot, that I hold my beliefs based upon, my own assessments. I act only on my own direction. It's not a crime to have a coinciding of viewpoints. I mean, that's one of the things I pointed out to them under FAR itself. U.S. courts have said, just because my points of view coincide with the Russian points of view, don't mean that I'm a Russian agent. And I said, in this case, it means that factually and intellectually, I'm on the right side of history, because I'm not promoting a Russian point of view. I'm promoting a desire for peace, a desire for arms control, a desire for prevention of nuclear war from a solely American perspective. I'm very selfish in this regard. They asked their questions. I gave them their answers. I told them straight up that, because at one point in time, the FBI agent said, will you register as a foreign agent? I said, absolutely not, never, because I will never act as a foreign agent. I will never allow myself to behave as a foreign agent. I don't want to be a foreign agent.
You've said, Scott, that you think that this could be targeted harassment, and certainly wouldn't be the first time, not only for you, but just in general, that the government does things like this. Is this connected to them seizing your passport back in June?
I believe so. Normally, when you go to the Foreign Agent Registration Act implementation, the normal procedures for the U.S. government are to send the target of their inquiry a letter of inquiry saying, we are concerned that your activities constitute behavior that falls under the Foreign Agent Registration Act. We have questions. We'd like answers. And then they would say, based upon your answers, we no longer are concerned, or we believe you have to register. And it becomes an issue only if you fail to register willingly. That's the normal procedure. Here they executed a search warrant. Based upon my discussion with them, their concern became paramount after I returned from Russia in January. And at that point in time, they initiated this federal investigation. And when I was seeking to return to Russia in June of this year, they seized my passport to prevent me from traveling. And it's related, to that investigation. So as I told the FBI agent, I said, you guys, you do know I have a constitutional right of free speech. He said, oh, yes, no, we know that, and we want to protect it. I said, but how can you protect that? When you act like this, it has a chilling impact on free speech, because what you're telling me is that my free speech, my articulation, my behavior as a journalist, that what I do is all related to journalism. And I said, you come into my house like this, it has a chilling effect. It means that there is a price that is paid for exercising constitutional rights of free speech. They didn't really have a response to that.
Do you expect to be indicted?
I certainly hope not. I don't expect to be indicted under the Foreign Agents Registration Act, because I'm not a foreign agent. I believe that it is my duty as an American citizen to hold my government accountable for actions that I believe are inconsistent with the ideals and values set forth in the Constitution. That's the duty of every American. That's what free speech exists for, and I'm exercising my free speech. But I am not here to hurt my country. I will never willingly hurt my country.
Wow, what an interesting discussion.
Yeah, it's another FBI story, George. Well, how do you feel about that?
Well, first of all, this guy has a checkered history. I don't know if everybody looks at the history. The guy's a convicted child molester.
Wow.
There's a whole Wikipedia on him. People should read it before they put people on their shows. But he's got a history. He's against Clinton and everything. He's got a long history. He's not an angel, and they're not going to just go to his house based on making
a comment.
Because he speaks well.
Yeah, he does. By the way, I want to say something very sad for women's rights, you guys. This is the boxer from Algeria, remember, who failed the gender test and beat out the other one. Just won the gold. Just won the gold medal
beat up
for
another woman.
Knocked out all the women.
Knocked out all the women and just won the gold medal.
That's a shock. You put a man fighting a woman in a boxing match, and he's going to win. I'm shocked.
Right, exactly. How's that for women's rights? Right. Let's put somebody in there with who fails a gender test and punches you in the face.
Unbelievable.
I think the Olympic Committee should be ashamed of themselves allowing that to happen.
It's embarrassing.
It is. It's incredible. And a 25-year-old woman, again, from Algeria, just got the gold just a little bit ago. And left some of the other, by the way, boxers, remember, within a few seconds in tears. Some of the females who were very, very upset that they had to compete against this person from Algeria.
Well, I think the transgenders should fight transgenders.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
You would think
Equal
it's fair.
rights.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Let the women fight themselves, let the men fight themselves, and let the transgenders fight each other.
Yeah, there you go.
Exactly.
Well said. Wow, what a wild week it's been, you guys, and we'll see what happens next week. And what do we all stand for, guys?
Truth, justice,
and the American way.
TGIF. Thank God it's Friday.